influenced by ideas that lead you astray. That is why our youth need to know the truth. Because if they are ignorant, then they would subject themselves to all kinds of manipulations. The first speaker just mentioned about MM. There are so many of them, but it is even deeper than that. Because if you have a solid spiritual foundation, all those will be meaningless to you. Then we also ask for grace. The grace to grow in love and honesty. We also ask for the attainment of lofty heights of building a nation where peace and justice will reign. This is our national anthem. This is our spiritual aspiration as a people. Let's see the material aspirations enshrined in section 15, 16, and 17 of the Constitution. Our motto is unity, faith, peace, and progress. It also specifies in section 16 and sections, both part 1 and section 1 and section 2, how the economic principle that should guide us. It said we should promote national prosperity on an efficient, dynamic, and self-reliant economy, and secure maximum welfare, freedom, and happiness of every citizen on the basis of social justice and equality of status and opportunity. And we should manage and operate the major sector of the economy and protect the right of every citizen. It also says we should ensure that policy is directed towards ensuring the promotion of a planned and balanced economic development, and to harness and distribute national resources as best as possible to serve the common good. These are spiritual as well as material aspirations. Now, what is the governing philosophy of the world? Number one, I call it enlightened darkness and hypocrisy. Students of philosophy can understand philosophy all the way from the 5th century or the 6th century BC up to date. What they will find is that the root of the world today is anchored in the Epicurean philosophy. And the Epicurean philosophy says that man does not need God because human reason and sense experience are sufficient to lead man to liberty, equality, and brotherhood. That philosophy also says pleasure is the supreme good and the main goal of life. So in other words, we are born to seek pleasure, to acquire, to accumulate, and to consume. That's the whole essence of life. But the presentation we have had so far says that would be a meaningless life. And the third component of it is that the ethical system is out of vices, of greed, of selfishness, and of hedonism. And it has a psychological system of non-contentment. And it is very clear that when you are not contented, you will never be satisfied. The more you acquire, the more you accumulate, the more you consume, the more you will want to acquire, the more you want to accumulate, the more you want to consume. Unfortunately, for you to be able to do that, somebody has to lack. That's the nature of appetites. For you to increase what you need, somebody else has to lack. And that is why we are presented with a classic rich man Lazarus problem. And the idea that that system can provide for Lazarus is falsehood. That's why we don't see Lazaruses on the rich man's table. Then economics understands this. But what have we done in economics? We have accepted it. And we have built a theory around it. Students of economics will know that your demand function depends on the idea of non-satiation and non-contentment. Because if you have a bliss point, you won't have a demand curve. The only way you can have a demand curve, and without the demand curve, there's no market analysis. So economics sits on the curse that human beings will never be contented. It also sits on the fear of scarcity. And therefore, together, the cause of non-contentment and the fear of scarcity produce a psychology of the rich that is emotionally unstable. You go through a period of optimism when the stock market is rising. And when it's about to fall, fear sets in, and then it starts going down. So cycles of optimism, of fear and worry, creates the foundation of the instability in the world. And that is why quickly we go to what Keynes said after the Great Depression in 1929. By the way, just a brief history of the Great Depression. Before 1929, the world was on the gold standard, anchored on the British pound. Before 1929, there was easy monetary policy of the US Fed, and there was margin loan, the type we had in 2006 to 2008 that created a problem in the stock market. Of course, when there is easy money and you reduce interest, you increase interest rates, at the end of a period of bull, immediately fear sets in and sell-off starts, particularly those who are borrowed on margin loans. As soon as they are selling off and the whole market crashes in October of 1929, those who stood to benefit the most, they met and assured the people that all is well. But they knew that the fundamentals were not right. They knew. But they also knew that by telling the people that all is not right and encouraging the government not to do the right thing, to intervene at the right time, they delay intervention, make the cost of intervention more costly and less effective. But while that is happening, the price will drop, and because they have cash reserves, they buy assets, both financial and real assets, at the cheap. And as a result of that, while others are suffering, their own net worth increases. The question is it or the point is, it is not everybody that dislikes recession. It is not everybody that dislikes stagflation. Because for some people, that is opportunity. If you follow the American election, one of the issues that came up clearly was that the current president was saying that he wished that the housing market would collapse because those of them who have cash will simply pick up the assets on the cheap. That's the reality of the governing philosophy of the global system. And that is why Keynes, when he wrote his famous book in 1936, said that the outstanding force of the economic society in which we live in are its failure to provide full employment. Today is Labor Day. That system cannot provide full employment. And secondly, its arbitrary and inequitable distribution of wealth and income. And that is why he argued that government should intervene, because left to the market, the problem will not be resolved. He also said to redistribute, which is a necessity, the government should tax progressively. But we know that Western politics is divided between those who want tax cuts and those who want tax increases.